1012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Exit.
Announced the arrival of the flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion.
And welcome, everybody, to this Thursday, June 16th, 2016 edition of TNZ Talk. That would be 6/16/16. Not that that means anything, but I thought it might be fun to say it. I am Tony Trupiano, the T in TNZ. Joining me now is the Z in TNZ, Richard Zombeck, writer extraordinaire for the Huffington Post and Liberals Unite. And Z, a pleasant day to you, my friend. Hope all is well in your universe.
Wonderful, isn't it? Wonderful, wonderful day. At least on this side of the planet, it's sunny. It's nice. I went for a bike ride today, and actually, I've been trying to go for a bike ride every day.
Well, I hope the weather's been with you.
It has.
Yeah, well, that's good. Lots happened in the last couple of days, and some of it is surrounding, of course, Orlando. But, I was thinking on the way home, and I just want to throw this out. The worst way for your city to become just identified by saying Littleton, or saying Aurora, or Newtown, or Orlando, or Charleston. People automatically know what that means now.
Yeah.
A pretty sad happenstance, my friend.
Yeah. And there's a long list of them. What I've been wondering about, and maybe you and I can discuss this today, is what made this, because here's what's been happening, right? McConnell has come out and said that he may consider an assault weapons ban. Other Republican senators and congressmen have said that they would look at an assault weapons ban and stricter gun laws, particularly when it comes to terrorists being allowed to get guns. And on our last show, I think it was the last episode, right? We played Bill O'Reilly on Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, it was the last show.
Yeah. And you and I kind of speculated as to, I think I wanted to get the recording, but I didn't have time. Go figure, right? It's like I could understand not being able to have time when we had like an actual time to be on a show, but so I forgot to get it. But you and I kind of speculated, hearing O'Reilly talk with Stephen Colbert about considering stricter gun laws or an assault weapons ban, whether or not he would have the guts to say that on his show.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And Tony,
as it so happens,
he did. And I'm gonna play that, and then we'll come back.
All right.
Now, the right-wing responsibility. There is too much gun crime in the USA, and high-powered weaponry is too easy to get. That's the fact. So let's deal with it. We all have the right to bear arms, but we don't have the right to buy and maintain mortars, even if you feel threatened by gangsters or a new world order. No bazookas, no Sherman tanks, no hand grenades. That's because the Second Amendment clearly states the government has a right to regulate militias made up of individuals. They have that right in the name of public safety.
Fox News' Bill O'Reilly, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow.
On his show, on the O'Reilly Factor, actually sounding like he would consider getting behind stricter gun laws.
Well, and, he's not alone. His colleague on Fox News Network, Gretchen Carlson, also came out in favor of an assault weapons ban. Now, she's still very much pro-open carry, but we can have that debate some other time. She spoke passionately about the need for gun control, and her audience did not like it. And in fact, when I was on doing my regular segment this morning on Daybreak USA on the USA Radio Network, they played some audio of Gretchen discussing that, and I had gone to the link before I did the interview, of course, to make sure that I was up to speed on what was going on, and Fox News had done a poll. Do you support a ban on assault weapons? Now, the poll, of course, was offered to anybody, but mostly listeners responded, and by 90+%, they said they did not support a ban.
Yeah, which doesn't that seem a little high to you?
Yeah, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
Really? It seems, I don't know.
Their audience skews, the demographics of the Fox News audience skews older. And that does explain some of it. And when I say older, I mean 35 plus. They don't attract a younger demographic. They don't attract, obviously, people with open minds. They don't attract the educated. They just don't. Well, they don't.
No, I know.
I mean, the demographics are out there. I'm not making this stuff up. People can go Google it themselves or Yahoo it or whatever search engine you want to use. By the way, is Internet Explorer still out there?
Oh, yeah. In fact, they've got a new one called Edge.
Edge. Okay. Anyway.
Internet Explorer Edge. It comes with Windows 10.
Okay.
Microsoft Edge. I'm sorry.
That's
Microsoft
right.
Edge.
With all that said, there are people on the right, and I was watching. Yes, I'm going to shock you. I was watching Chris Hayes last night, and he had a Republican congressman on that is sick and tired of being sick and tired. He's sick and tired of Republicans doing nothing on this issue. And he's tired of having to go into his district and explain that his one vote won't make a difference. Of course, he's finally grown a set big enough to walk away from his party on this issue. And will it matter at the end of the day is the question. And then we can talk about the pseudo filibuster that happened yesterday as well. Chris Murphy did an amazing job, along with Cory Booker and a couple other Democrats. It wasn't really a true filibuster because the end result wasn't going to change anything. And normally a filibuster is supposed to change minds and hearts, and this one didn't.
Well, but here's the thing, Tony. It's, I watched parts of it, and, I got some audio for the show today on the filibuster, and I'm kind of torn between yay, right on, and also why didn't you do this, years ago? Why? And that was from the beginning when I was saying let's talk about this. Is what's the difference now, right? I mean, we had 20 kids a year ago, right? It was a year ago that were gunned down.
4 years ago.
I'm sorry, 4 years ago.
If you can believe it's been 4 years.
Yeah, I can't, and nothing's been done. That were gunned down, school children, and nothing got done. In fact, 80% of the people in this country called, and hundreds of people went to Congress and stood in Congress while they voted on it. People who had lost their children stood in Congress while Congress voted on it, and they voted it down. The Republicans almost unanimously voted against stricter gun laws, while the families of the children who had been shot were standing there watching the vote.
Well, I was listening to NPR earlier today, And there was a gentleman on that used to be a communications consultant for President Obama. And he talked about going to many of these. And, of course, as we're taping this, the president has just left Orlando. I haven't had a chance to hear any of that audio. I'm sure it was beautiful. He always, unfortunately, is too well prepared for these kinds of things. But this gentleman talked about going to Newtown and other places that the president has visited after these tragedies. And the president really takes this stuff personal. I mean, he internalizes it because he doesn't know how to stop it with the Congress that he has. I mean, there's only so much he can do with executive order, as you know. And this is just one of those issues where if he were with a stroke of a pen, he could change it, he would, but he can't.
Well, I mean, it's been what are we at now? Every 3 or 4 months, or every?
Well, no,
every
I
few
can
months.
make it simpler than that. In the last 5 years, there have been 892 mass shootings. So you do it.
No, I think it was more than that, isn't it? Isn't
No,
it
it
like
was
900?
No, 892. 892.
Was it?
Yeah.
Well, listen. While we're talking about GOP obstructionism, let's listen to Cory Booker, who gave a speech yesterday during Chris Murphy's filibuster.
All right.
So I rise to ask Senator Murphy a question because there is a question on the hearts and minds of the majority of the people of our nation. They're asking the question, how long will this go on? They're asking the question, how can we be a nation so mighty and great, yet hold this distinction on the planet Earth where these kind of mass killings go on at a rate, at a level, nowhere else seen on the planet Earth? It is here in this country, founded on the idea that we form this government for our common defense, that we form this government to ensure domestic tranquility, that we form this government based on the idea that we can make for a safer, stronger, and more prosperous land. That question is being asked from coast to coast, from north to south. And Senator Murphy and I talked yesterday about coming to the floor today and not letting business as usual happen. So we talked with our other colleagues who will come to this floor today, who all have in their hearts that word enough, enough, enough. What we are seeking is not radical. What we're seeking is not something that is partisan. What we're seeking is common sense that is supported by the overwhelming majority of this nation. Study after study, poll after poll, survey after survey of gun owners, of people who have weapons, who take to heart their Second Amendment rights. When you ask them, what should we do? Do you support closing the terrorist loophole, creating practical, common sense bars for people that are suspected of terrorism from buying a gun? 82% of gun owners say yes, we should do that. They say enough.
So I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Because this is something that's been confusing me for a couple days now. Is I understand enough is enough in the hearts of Democrats and liberals and whatever we want to call them. I'm still trying to figure out what the real motive is for Gretchen Carlson, Bill O'Reilly, Donald Trump, for that matter, who tweeted that he was going to go to the NRA and discuss an assault weapons ban and stricter gun laws and keeping and you know, I tweeted back to him too, which was very popular on Twitter, by the way. I said, is begging for permission, what chapter in Art of the Deal is that in? because he's essentially having to go to ask the NRA for permission to create stricter gun laws, is how I read it. So what's the motivation by the right, which they're going to get hammered by their base and Fox by their fans and audience, by adopting this attitude? What's the motivation?
Maybe it's pure and simple. Enough is enough. Sometimes, wait a minute. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one, and maybe everybody has just finally had enough.
I would like to believe that.
I understand your cynicism. I completely get it. Let's go back to the question you asked 10 minutes ago. Why now? Why the outrage now? I think it's cumulative, Z. I think there's a cumulative outrage amongst Democrats that are tired. Listen, when you're in the minority and you have no voice, and no matter what you want to do, when you wake up in the morning, it isn't going to matter. How long does it take before you finally just say, I can't take this anymore? Now, I'm not asking people to get out their guns and start shooting up Congress. It's the last thing I'm suggesting. In fact, I'm not suggesting at all. But maybe the answer to your question, again, is the simplest answer. Frustration. Heartbreak, a decay of what was once, something that made this country strong. There was a time when the National Rifle Association was actually reasonable. There really was.
They used to give training classes and stuff. They used to teach responsible gun ownership.
Imagine that.
They used to talk about locking your weapons in a safe and keeping it out of reach of children. We have more kids shooting their brothers and sisters and their grandparents and their own parents because someone left a gun out like a freaking moron. Every week there's some kid who shot a gun. There's some guy that shot his penis. What do we have? Like 5 to 10 million guns out there by gun owners. And, that's what we have. So, the discussion, it's interesting to me though that the discussion is finally turning, to this, this might actually be a possibility, that we may actually be looking at stricter gun laws in this country and taking assault rifles off the streets.
Well, it's interesting because, I saw an interesting infographic day before yesterday. There are more gun shops in this country than Starbucks coffee shops in the world.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh, my God.
There are more places to buy guns in this country than there are for you to buy a cup of Starbucks in the world.
Oh, my God.
And by the way, when something like Orlando happens, gun shops get a whole lot busier. And a whole lot of stupid people walk into a gun shop, and the first question they say to the people standing at the counter is, I just saw what happened in Orlando. I need to protect myself. What kind of gun would you recommend?
Yeah.
They don't even know what they're buying.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd point that out. All right, listen, lots of audio. Where do you want to go from here?
That's a good question. Should we could talk about Trump? Here's what I do want to do, though. Here's what I do want to do. Is there was a speech. There was a vigil in Utah for the victims of the Orlando shooting, and the lieutenant governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, went there impromptu. It wasn't planned. He showed up there to speak. And what I want to do, it's a long segment. It's 9.5 minutes long. So what I'd like to do today is end the show with that. So when we sign off, we'll play that audio in its entirety for people to listen to. What do you think about that?
You just give me the high sign, and I'll shut up.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do that at the end of the show.
And it's not easy to shut me up, so I will definitely shut up for that.
It's easy enough.
All right.
What I don't want to do is jump around too much today, and I don't know why, because it doesn't really matter to me for the most part that we jump around. But Trump's numbers are down, and along with this gun stuff and the LGBT stuff, and I want to make a couple points. One that may be inappropriate, and another. I think what happened in Orlando, because of where it happened and who it happened to, this is going to be a really big issue. This is a community.
Speak more directly. Please speak more directly.
The LGBT community has been discriminated against, dehumanized, vilified in this country for decades. And they are an incredible force for change in this country. And I think that because of where it happened and who it happened to, the LGBT community, I think there's going to be a huge push on anti-gun legislation and anti-discrimination legislation. Let me put it to you this way, okay? The Republican House, 2 days after the Orlando massacre happened, voted against a bill that would protect the LGBT community from discrimination. They voted against it. They voted it down 2 days after. And Pete Sessions was one of the people who offered his thoughts and prayers to the people of Orlando and the victims, and 2 days later blocked a vote in the House that would basically make discrimination against the LGBT community illegal. So this is the Congress that we're dealing with. These are the people that were voted in. These are your tax dollars in action. That a massacre happens, and I think you and I are both in agreement that this was a hate crime. From what we know about the shooter, this was a hate crime. And why is that kind of hate allowed to happen and go on is because we've had something like 127 laws in different states come up that are discriminatory against the LGBT community.
Well, it's indicative of an umbrella approach that Republicans have to the LGBTQ community, which is if we can't attack them, we should not protect them. If we can't ignore them, then we are not going to let them go to the bathroom. And one way or another, we'll just piss off enough people in the LGBTQ community that eventually they're just going to say, we can only fight this war on so many fronts. We're done. They've made a really calculated mistake there.
Well, and I'm sorry, but that's just not a group you want to piss off. I know how that sounds, but that's a force to be reckoned with. I really think that's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it always has been. When you poke the sleeping bear, and this sleeping bear has been poked so many times that now it's fully awake. And, there will be repercussions to that. I bet you that we will see more openly gay members, or I should say openly gay candidates for office around the country elected this year than ever before. I really believe that. I really do believe that. Listen, before we, and we can stay on this topic if that's what you'd like to do, but I got really unhinged the other day about Trump revoking the credentials of the Washington Post. And he has, as you told me this morning, now threatened to yank the license of CNN, which is just ridiculous. He has been in an ongoing spat with the Huffington Post. He is
and
now
Politico.
Right, and Politico, and now BuzzFeed, and it continues to get and to careen a little bit more out of control. Well, Seth Meyers, I think did something important. In fact, I think Seth Meyers did something that maybe the mainstream media should do. What do you think would happen if they all just said, F it, we're not going to cover his campaign?
And I think you and I had this conversation too, is, Dana Bash from the Washington Post.
She's from CNN. She's from CNN.
Then I'm not thinking of Dana Bash then. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It'll come to me. It was one of the writers from the Washington Post wrote an editorial about the Washington Post having been banned from Trump rallies, and basically saying that the rest of the media needed to stand behind the Washington Post. His name is Dana.
Dana Milbank.
Thank you. Dana Milbank wrote an editorial about that. And, my impression of it, my opinion of it, it was a very well written article. Milbank is a terrific writer. I would have liked to seen that same article come from other media. That the rest of the media needs to stand behind the Washington Post. That people need to stand up.
Let me correct something that you said, because I don't know if you just said it wrong or said it deliberately. But they haven't just been banned from his rallies; they've been banned from his campaign.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And there's a big difference. No press conferences, no access to the candidate, no interviews. Period. With no one on his campaign. No one. I want people to think about that. I want them to wrap their heads around that.
So, I mean, are these rallies even considered? So I guess they're considered private rallies then, right?
No. You can revoke credentials of anybody you want at any event that you want. I've been credentialed for hundreds of things over the years and have had my credentials not revoked, but denied dozens of times. Usually, I tried to go to the Republican National Convention, I don't know, 7 or 8 times, and was revoked, was rebuffed, was told no.
Rebuked. Refused.
Yep.
Repudiated.
So it's not unheard of. I mean, that's not unheard of, but it is on a presidential campaign. It's never happened.
Well, and I thought the funniest one, and you mentioned it, was that he's threatening that when he's president, he's gonna revoke CNN's FCC license. I mean, that's just beautiful. Yeah, I mean, he really thinks that he's going to be working without Congress at all. And in fact, he said that in speeches too. I'm going to have to do this all on my own because obviously Congress is incompetent. So I'm going to have to do this stuff myself.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't work that way. And Paul Ryan said he was going to continue to speak up on Trump. Anyway, let's get back to Seth Meyers for a moment. I don't want to get too far away from that particular topic. And I agree with you. I wish that somebody other than from the Washington Post would have written that piece, and I would love to be able to say, yes, there have been other mainstream media sources that have joined in solidarity with the Post. It's not happened yet, but you know what? Sometimes these things trickle. So let's listen to Seth Meyers.
BuzzFeed, Politico, The Daily Beast, Univision, the Huffington Post have all been blocked in recent months.
By Election Day, the only media outlets that are going to be allowed on Trump's campaign will be the National Enquirer and Rich Pricks Monthly. Trump complained that the Washington Post has reported inaccurately on comments he made in which he seemed to suggest that President Obama sympathized with terrorists, comments Trump made in an interview Monday morning.
He doesn't get it, or he gets it better than anybody understands. It's one or the other. We're led by a man that either is not tough, not smart, or he's got something else in mind. And the something else in mind, people can't believe it.
Sure, Trump didn't explicitly say it. He implied it with all the subtlety of an 8th grader's cologne. Kevin, I'm going to need you to go home and take a shower. It's a bottle, not a serving. In fact, later in a radio interview, Trump was given a chance to clear all this up by stating unequivocally that he was not trying to imply that President Obama somehow sympathizes with terrorists, but instead Trump said, quote, "I'll let people figure that out for themselves." The worst part about Trump's campaign isn't just that he says crazy but that he expects us to figure out the crazy he says. Listening to Trump is like opening up a fortune cookie. When it comes to catching worms, the early bird is the best. Believe me, everyone says so. But Trump's vague innuendo is no accident. This is a strategy he uses to try to appeal to the outer fringes while also avoiding accountability.
It's Donald Trump trying to be all things to all people. For people who think the president is against us as Americans, they can listen to that and think that that's what Donald Trump is saying. And for more respectable Republicans who don't want to think Donald Trump was saying that, they can say, oh, well, he didn't really mean that. He meant some other thing. It's like a magic eye. You can look at Donald Trump and see in him whatever you feel like seeing.
Yes, that's right. Donald Trump is like a magic eye in that if you look at him long enough, you see different things, like an orange beanbag with an old cat sitting on it, or the Nickelodeon splat. As for the Washington Post, we here at Late Night believe in freedom of the press and therefore have decided to stand in solidarity with them. So as long as the Washington Post is banned from Donald Trump's campaign, Donald Trump will be banned from ever coming on this show. You missed out, buddy.
There it is. Beautiful. Now, if some of the other late night folks could do it, that would be great.
Yeah, it's just, and it's not just the late night folks. It's anybody that reports. I would absolutely love it if the media en masse would just say, you want to play the game your way? Okay, we'll do that. We have no problem playing the game your way. Good luck. But they're complicit. You and I have had these conversations. The media created, in a big way, the media created Donald Trump, the candidate.
Yeah, but here's the problem, Tony, is that I would love to see them all come together and stand behind, places like Washington Post, Huffington Post, Politico, BuzzFeed, things like that. But you have to weigh that against not reporting the news, right? We've seen news anchors and reporters start to call him on his BS. We've seen them start to question him. We've seen them do live, real-time fact-checking with him and call him on stuff. They haven't been real tough. I mean, we're not talking about, Walter Cronkite, Murrow's tough, but we're seeing them kind of grow a bit more of a backbone. And, Myers, he's a comedian, fine. He's great. He's great at reporting on the news and blah, blah, blah. But this is a start, right? And it's coming from a late-night TV show where other late-night TV shows may very well follow. And we know how important those shows are to a candidate. So, we're starting to see this kind of, ball rolling down a hill where, I would think that the next, 2 or 3 weeks are going to be interesting when we start seeing what happens with the media and how they're covering Trump. I don't think they can just stop covering him because the stuff that he's saying is so ridiculous and dangerous and ludicrous that you have to make a public aware of what this guy is saying and how dangerous it is. So you can't just stop covering him. The problem is that if we're left with just Breitbart and Fox News covering him, as a society, we're pretty much screwed.
I'm going to end up disagreeing with you. Not vehemently, but I am going to disagree with you. I don't think they have to cover him. I don't think. And here's the problem. The way you characterized it, and you did a beautiful job of doing it, was that they have to point out how dangerous he is, etc. Well, a true impartial media doesn't do that. They just report it. Now, you've got your op-ed pages, you've got on television, editorials. But if they're just doing straight reporting, then people see it as news, not as conflict, not as danger. Now, listen, we've got some partisanship with MSNBC. And because cable news has become much less about news, obviously, than it is about viewership, that works in our favor. So I'll give you that. I'll concede that 100%. There are people that are actually beginning to define themselves. Jake Tapper would be one. Certainly Rachel Maddow has always been the face of reason. And people often forget, and I find this so fascinating, people often forget that Rachel Maddow is a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
And she covers something like the Orlando Massacre calmly, collectively, factually, without it being personal. And it's got to be, right? I'm an Italian. I'm an Italian American. Z. If somebody went into, I don't know, somewhere and specifically targeted Italian Americans, I'd be outraged. It happened with Hispanics and the LGBT community. Got a 2-for-1 there.
Yeah.
It happened at black people by a white guy a year ago Friday in Charleston, North Carolina. South Carolina. It happened to 21st graders.
Yeah, well, we heard Anderson Cooper reading off the names the other night.
Right.
And incidentally, his interview with my favorite attorney general from Florida, Pam Bondi, who was also, by the way, pretty much bribed by Donald Trump and also did absolutely nothing for foreclosure victims during the crisis.
Stay on track here. Stay on track.
But he was interviewing Pam Bondi, who argued against gay marriage, basically saying that homosexuals were a risk and a threat to our society and civilization as we know it. Anderson Cooper called her out on it because she, sent her thoughts and prayers to the victims of the Orlando shooting. And on live TV, he questioned her about her case in which she said that homosexuals were basically a risk to our society and a danger. And she claimed to have never said that. He read her statements from the case that she argued against gay marriage in. And then earlier today, or yesterday, Pam Bondi went on a radio show and said that the entire segment had been edited by CNN to show her in a bad light. I tried to get the audio of Anderson Cooper today responding to her claims. Unfortunately, it was really choppy. I'll try to get it for the next episode. But he stood up to her once again. Not to make a complete direct parallel, but you brought up Rachel Maddow and her sexuality, and Anderson Cooper is gay and on CNN, and that that kind of reporting, when you're part of a population that is discriminated against and has been targeted in a brutal massacre, and to try to stay unbiased and responsible in your reporting has got to be unbelievably difficult to do.
Absolutely.
And I commend them both.
Yeah, and I'm keeping my eye on our time because we're going to need that 9 minutes. But I just ran across a story from northern Michigan, and I don't live in northern Michigan. I live in southern Michigan. Let me just read it. It's very short, and I think you'll get the biggest kick out of this. Northern Michigan officials say a sign supporting Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump that rises roughly 35 feet above a garage roof is too big and must be removed. Michael White's sign, imagine that, a guy by the name of Michael White, features the candidate's last name in 3 foot by 3 foot capital letters, is attached to a vertical extension ladder atop his garage. Zoning officials say it violates size ordinances and gives the man until the end of the week to remove it. The man says he'll comply, though he admits to considering a smaller replacement statement that apologizes for not being larger. He says that he usually doesn't follow politics, but likes Trump despite his drawbacks. The garage roof also bears the message, "God bless America," and the words in matching red capital letters. I thought you'd get a kick out of that.
That's beautiful. So, listen, I want to play a quick clip of that Sacramento Baptist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is exactly what we're talking about. And just imagine being Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow, and they both did report on this, having to report on this and knowing that there's a faction of society in this country who agrees what this guy says.
Every sodomite's a pedophile. Amen. Every single one, it's an unnatural sin. It's unnatural to want to be with someone of the same sex, and it's unnatural to want to take advantage of a child. I mean, the tragedy is, I'm kind of upset that he didn't finish the job, because these people are predators. They are abusers. They take advantage of people. And look, as Christians, we need to take the stand that it is not our job to sit there and say, "Oh, this is a tragedy," or "Oh, this is something we mourn." Or look, the Bible paints a picture that these are wicked people.
Beautiful. Nice. Yeah. Christian lad.
I'd like to know where it says in the Bible that these are wicked people. Actually, he goes on to quote, Leviticus this, Leviticus that, and of course there's the infamous scene in The West Wing where Martin Sheen's portrayal of Josiah Bartlett rips into a Dr. Laura type radio show host for her bloviating about that. How sad is it, Z, that we live in a country where we're all afforded access to the First Amendment, yet some treat it like it's toilet paper?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at okay. So you asked where is this in the Bible? Okay. So let me just read something really quick. I'm going to tell you where it's from and when it was read, because I just wrote an article about it on Liberals Unite. So, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whispers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God that they wish commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. And right before that was a section on men with men working that which is unseemly and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error, which was meat. It was meat. That is from Romans 1:18 to 32 and Revelations 22:18 to 19, passage from the Bible that refers to homosexuality and the penalty for homosexual behavior, was read by Representative Sean Patrick Maloney Rick Allen, to open a session of Congress in which they were going to vote on an anti-discrimination bill of LGBT. That's what they read in their opening prayers, was that homosexuals should receive the death penalty according to the Bible. And then they took a vote on an anti-discrimination bill. Just disgusting.
All right, very quickly, we've got to wrap it up here because we've got this Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox's statement at a prayer vigil to get to. Two things I want to mention real quickly. Number one, John McCain pretty much said that President Obama was responsible for the massacre that happened in Orlando, and then is now trying to walk it back. That may have just cost him his Senate seat. And perhaps in the next episode of TNZ Talk, we can get into that a little further. Number two, Joe Cox, who is a lawmaker in Britain, where they have very little gun violence, was shot and murdered today, and that story is still unfolding. And so I just wanted to mention that, and certainly for a grieving family and a grieving country, that's in the middle of a very bitter fight right now in an election that's coming up next week. This was not welcome news, and so we certainly want to recognize the hard work of that lawmaker and wish her family well.
Okay, so listen, I'm gonna give our 411.
Okay, go for
and it. We will sign off and play that clip from Spencer Cox. All right, so help us, friend us, follow us, send us money. You can do all of that by going to tnztalk.com. Find out the many ways to support us. You can also listen to our archives. And something that does help us tremendously is if you share our podcasts far and wide on your social media channels. Tony?
Absolutely. We're going to leave it here for Richard Zombeck. I am Tony Trupiano. And as always, we ask that you be well.
We will now listen from the Lieutenant Governor of Utah, Spencer Cox. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very humbled and honored to be here with you tonight. Okay. I'll speak very loudly so you can hear in the back. I'm supposed to be in Miller County tonight, about 150 miles away, but this was too important when Jim asked me to come. I almost never write what I'm going to say, but tonight, about an hour ago, I sat down and the words just came, and so I wrote them, and so I hope you'll allow me to read these. Thank you for being here tonight on this very solemn and somber occasion. I begin with an admission and an apology. First, I recognize fully that I am a balding, youngish, middle-aged, straight, white, male Republican politician with all of the expectations and privileges that come with those labels. I am probably not who you expected to hear from today. I'm here because yesterday morning, 49 Americans were brutally murdered. And it made me sad. And it made me angry. And it made me confused. I'm here because those 49 people were gay. I'm here because it shouldn't matter. But I'm here because it does. Now, I'm not here to tell you that I know exactly what you are going through. I'm not here to tell you that I feel your pain. I don't pretend to know the depths of what you are feeling right now. But I do know what it feels like to be scared. And I do know what it feels like to be sad. And I do know what it feels like to be rejected. And more importantly, I know what it feels like to be loved. I grew up in a small town. I went to a small rural high school. There were some kids in my class that were different than me, and sometimes I wasn't kind to them. I didn't know it at the time, but I know now that they were gay. I regret not treating them with the kindness, dignity, and respect, the love that they deserved. For that, I sincerely and humbly apologize. Over the intervening years, my heart has changed. It has changed because of you. It has changed because I've gotten to know many of you. You have been very patient with me as I went through this change. You even helped me learn the right letters in the alphabet in the right order, even though you keep adding new ones. You have been kind to me. Jim DeBacchus even told me I dress nice once, and I know he's lying. You have treated me with the kindness, dignity, respect, the love that I very often did not deserve. And it has made me love you. But now we are here. We are here because 49 beautiful, amazing people are gone. These are not just statistics. These were individuals. These were human beings. They each have a story. They each had dreams, goals, talents, friends, family. They are you and they are me. And one night they went out to relax, to laugh, to connect, to forget, to remember, and in a few minutes of chaos and terror, they were gone. I believe that we can all agree that we have come a long way as a society when it comes to our acceptance and understanding of the LGBTQ community. Did I get it right? However, there has been something about this tragedy that has very much troubled me. I believe that there is a question, two questions actually, that each of us needs to ask ourselves in our heart of hearts. And I'm speaking now to the straight community. How did you feel when you heard that 49 people had been gunned down by a self-proclaimed terrorist? That's the easy question. Here's the hard one. Did that feeling change when you found out that the shooting was at a gay bar at 2 a.m. in the morning? If that feeling changed, then we're doing something wrong. So now we find ourselves at a crossroads of hate and terror. How do we respond? How do you respond? Do we lash out with anger, hate, and mistrust? Or do we, as Abraham Lincoln begged us, appeal to the better angels of our nature? Usually when tragedy occurs, we see our nation come together. I was saddened yesterday to see far too many retreating to their overworn policy corners and demagoguery. Let me be clear. There are no simple policy answers to this tragedy. Beware of those that say they have an easy solution. It doesn't exist. I can assure you, though, that calling people idiots, communists, fascists, or bigots on Facebook is not going to change any hearts or minds. Today we need fewer Republicans and fewer Democrats and more Americans. But just because an easy solution doesn't exist doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. The greatest generations in the history of the world were never innately great. They became great because of how they responded in the face of evil and terror. Their humanity is measured by their response to hate and terror. I truly believe that this is the defining issue of our generation. Can we be brave? Can we be strong? Can we be kind? And perhaps even happy in the face of atrocious acts of hate and terrorism? Do we find a way to unite, or do these atrocities further corrode and divide us as a nation? Can we, the citizens of the great state of Utah, lead the nation in love and in the face of adversity? Can we become a greatest generation? I promise that we can, but I also promise that it will never happen if we leave it to the politicians. Ultimately, there is only one way for us to come together. It must happen at a personal level. We must learn to truly love one another. The Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, "You will not enter paradise until you believe, and you will not believe until you love one another." Jesus said this, "Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you." Now, you know a little something about hate, and you know a little something about persecution, but you also know something about loving, blessing, and doing good. What our country needs more than ever is less politics and more kindness. If nothing else, as we can see here tonight, this tragedy has the potential to bring us closer than ever before. And so may we leave today with a resolve to be a little kinder. May we try to listen more and talk less. May we forgive someone that has wronged us. And perhaps, most importantly, try to love someone that is different from us. For my straight friends, might I suggest starting with someone who is gay? I leave you with the words of Lyndon B. Johnson. They were spoken at another very sad time in our history, the death of John F. Kennedy. He said this, "Our enemies have always made the same mistake. In my lifetime, in depression and in war, they have awaited our defeat. Each time, from the secret places of the American heart, came forth the faith they could not see or that they could not even imagine. It brought us victory, and it will again, for this is what America is about." On behalf of the 3 million people of the state of Utah, we are Orlando, and we love you, and I love you. Thank you.